Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from around the world. I'm delighted to welcome you to have this conversation. My name is Dr. Peter Biara Jack. Many of you who follow South Sudan might already know about me. It's really a pleasure to be speaking with you, and I welcome you for joining us in this conversation. So any one of you who follows South Sudan, or anyone who lives in South Sudan, knows that the economy in South Sudan right now is going through a serious crisis. In fact, this has become a perpetual thing because it has been happening for so long. Not long ago, many of you remember when the country was going through hyperinflation. This was the time when the pound significantly deteriorated, and it has continued to do so since then. In fact, as we speak, South Sudanese pounds right now is at more than 900 South Sudanese pounds to a US dollar. And if you would recall, at the time of independence in 2011, it was only $1 to only 2 South Sudanese pounds. So imagine how much the currency has deteriorated since then, and what that has meant for the incomes of everyone that works in South Sudan, whether they are basic government employees, they are soldiers, they are workers in healthcare, or they are teachers or nurses, or from any other sectors of the economy. As we speak, many people cannot afford basic livelihood in the country. Even in the capital, there are people who are literally dying, people who are starving to death. Even in the presidential palace, among the soldiers of South Sudan, who are wearing uniform, protecting the president and his family, right now as we speak, they have nothing to eat. In fact, 2 weeks ago, members of Wounded Heroes stormed the Ministry of Finance because they have gone hungry for days and were missing basic food so that they can sustain their lives. This is the reality for everybody in the country. And we know what is the cause of it. For all these years, we have wondered if the president and everyone else within his circle are aware of these realities that average South Sudanese face on a daily basis. In fact, it was very interesting to hear just a few days ago that the president has finally realized that the country is actually going through economic crisis. And interestingly, he has called for the Ministry of Finance to convene a conference to discuss the economic crisis that the country is facing and come up with recommendations on what can be done going forward. Those of you who follow me on Facebook must have realized by now that I call this request by the president disingenuous. And it is disingenuous because of so many reasons. This is not the first time that recommendations on what can be done to salvage the economy have been made to the president. In fact, the crisis that we face right now, we saw it coming. Many of us saw it coming, and we have been warning the government, warning the presidency to do the right thing and to forget repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. This has not been possible for whatever reasons that are best known to those who are in the leadership. You can even remember from the time of independence, when the country became independent on the first day, there was the South Sudan Development Plan. This was a 3-year strategy that was very much detailed. Its development took more than a year, with a serious coordination at the national level, at the state level, at the level of counties, to identify key priorities that would be undertaken to build a people-driven economy that would put the people of South Sudan at the center of it. It also made sure that the governance structure in the country deliver for the average person. It deliver for the common man. So in the governance sector, challenges that face the country at the national level, at the state level, at the local level were identified. And it was the same thing for the security sector. How the sector can build a national security architecture in which the mandates of the different organizations within security agencies, national security, the military, the police, how all of them work in concert to ensure that people were secure and their livelihoods were secure. And finally, on the social and humanitarian affairs, how they were going to be achieved. This was the detailed strategy. It was never implemented. And since then, there has been so many others. Every year, there are budget plans that are made by the Ministry of Finance that involve the coordination of the budget sector working groups. Each year, there are plans that are developed, that are costed. They have never been implemented. Look at the budget execution and look at the budget plans. It's like looking at the day and night. They don't meet because there is no physical discipline. And when you look at where the violation is coming from, it is coming from the presidency. This is where the budget itself is being sabotaged. Vision 2040, it was another document that was developed through interagency working system to define where the country would be by the year 2040. And there was a certain way in which we imagined the country. And there was detail of action that was supposed to be undertaken. None of it has been implemented. And ever since, when we have economic crisis, like what we are going through right now, the president would convene a committee to look at what the problem is and to make a recommendation. All of you remember, even last time, the last committee that was formed, which was chaired by the Vice President, James Wani Iga, the Vice President of the Economic Cluster, they went around and they met with experts. And academics came, think tanks came, bureaucrats came, and people discussed what should be done. And there were very detailed proposals and programs that were made. In fact, I was talking with one of my colleagues from the World Bank the other day, and in the upcoming spring meetings, there's going to be a follow-up on some of these proposals that have been made and what the government of South Sudan has actually managed to achieve. And here we are today with the president saying he wants to convene another conference to look at what the problem is. So if he has been unable to implement the recommendation of the previous conferences, what is the guarantee that he will implement the recommendations now? We don't need to be theoretical. Let's look at the reality. Are the problems we face today that complex that it requires forming another committee? We know what is happening with the rampant corruption in the country. There are individuals that are being given oil cargoes on monthly basis. They are being awarded to them as individuals. They are being awarded to their companies. Look at the revelation of the century. There are kids. Sometimes these kids are like 6 months or 2 years, and they have millions and millions of dollars in their bank account. And if you look at all of those individuals, they are all within the network of the president and his family. And we know some of these individuals also with this shoddy construction of roads. Roads are being constructed, roads in which the contracts were single source. Individuals were awarded the contract without any bidding process. This is happening. We know that these individuals are being given the resources on a monthly basis, tens of millions of dollars. And yet, officials that work for the government, including those who work abroad, have not received basic salaries. So imagine how the president has been going around the country launching roads, and bureaucrats, officials that have already performed functions and services for the government have not been paid. Does that show that we are running the country and we are running the economy in a sound way? Shouldn't those people be paid? How are their families expected to survive? How are they expected to eat? These questions are being asked, but they are not being answered. But at the same time also, if you look at the second issue, we have the problem of very opaque debt. These are loans that were made by individuals at the highest level of the government. And sometimes we don't even know what are the details of these loans. Thanks to the previous Minister of Finance, Agaga Achilwal, We now know that the oil has been sold in advance until 2027. And he himself, when he was there, he was saying he has no money to pay salaries unless he's able to sell the oil for 2028 and beyond. That means that the oil is being mortgaged already in advance. But what has been done with this money? These loans that were taken, they were taken for what purpose? What were the terms of it? Where is the money? What has been done with it? The president, if he is genuine about fixing the economic problem, must investigate these loans, and if these loans are found not to be interests of South Sudan, they must be cancelled so that we have a fiscal space within our budget to be able to program and plan activities that will actually generate the economy of South Sudan. In fact, it is very clear what it is we should do. The essence of economy is to make people productive. Economic is about the factors of production. We have our people, we have our land, and we have capital. Sometimes there is a little that we have inside the country, but there's a capital that we can raise abroad. How do we make these factors of production productive within our society, productive within South Sudan? Obviously, South Sudan has enormous economic potential. Look at our resources. Look at our land. Look at our minerals. If there was a committed government that was willing to develop these economic policies, these economic resources, if there was a committed, competent government that was willing to develop all these economic resources for the benefit of the South Sudanese people, we would have achieved so much so far. Yet, for the last 12 years of our independence, we have, in fact, been going forward. And this is why I have been saying for all this time, if you look, for example, what needs to be done. Currently, we have half of the country is dealing with unprecedented levels of flood, and the other part of the country is dealing with a drought. We have a part of the country where the abundance of water has become a problem, and we have another part of the country where the problem is the scarcity of water. And we've been getting pressure. The government of South Sudan has been getting pressure from Egypt, but Egypt wants us to act in their interest, not actually to sit down and consider what is in the best interest of South Sudan. And if you look where the water is in abundance, what if we are able to build a canal that will take the water where it is in abundance to where it is in its scarcity within our own country? This will actually increase by 2 to 3-fold the size of land that we can actually grow on a regular basis, both through rain-fed agriculture and also through irrigation. Because these man-made channels in which we will direct water from where it is in abundance to where it is scarce, they will also multiply the size of land that is available, and it will make it easier for us to connect irrigation channels to different parts of our country. This is something that we can achieve. And the problem we face is a problem of climate change. This issue is connected to everything in the country, including the issues of land. Right now, there are so many conflicts that are being fought in the country because of the issue of land. And sometimes you will have a naive response that will come from the government. Everybody must return to their own land. But we are dealing with so many changes that are taking place in the country simultaneously. Sometimes, yes, it is right. People must return back to their own land. But in other times, it requires us to reconceptualize how we think about land. We should not think about it as a static place that is only connected to us through emotions. But we think of it as an asset, an economic asset that has to be made productive. And in our case, if you look, for example, in Jonglei, in part of Upper Nile, the size of Sud wetlands have tripled from 2019 to where it is today. Triple. Now, before 2019, Sud was about the size of the state of New Hampshire in the United States. Or if you're from abroad, it is about the size of Netherlands. That was the size of Sud before 2019. Right now, it's 3 times that. So what has happened? A lot of villages or lands have been affected by the flood, have been submerged in the water. And as a result, people have been displaced, and cattle camps have become uninhabitable. And it's the same thing with the areas where the water has become scarce. All of this is because of the climate change. It's because of what is happening to the rainfall and what is happening to the discharge of water from Lake Victoria into the Nile. But this problem can be resolved simply. There are international funds that exist where a government like South Sudan, a poor country, can apply for funds that can allow it to cope with the adverse effects of climate change, because all of these emission of greenhouse gases into the sky was done without us having substantially contributed to it. And as a result, these international mechanisms can actually serve us to provide us with resources, the capital that we need to make these big structural investments that will then allow our economy to shift into productivity. It's one example of projects that can be done. It's the same thing with housing. In 2018, before I was detained, one of the proposals that I made was that we have to make a massive construction of houses. In every single state, every one of the 10 capitals of the states of South Sudan, we should build 50,000 homes. And these homes should range from 3-bedroom to 5-bedroom. And we build them. This is going to create jobs. It's going to allow construction sector to emerge in a very significant way. And we just don't concentrate in the houses. We are also going to build schools in every single neighborhood. We build playgrounds. We build clinics. And this will be done based on population, based on the latest urban planning, research, and development that is available outside there. So we can just take this knowledge. And there are also companies that have emerged that now specialize in building low-cost housing. Housing that is adapted to the climate change that we are dealing with in our part of the world. Housing that are cheap, that use local materials. We can do this very, very, very easily. After all, what does development mean? Development means things like this, providing housing for people. This is something that we can do. And we cost it out, and the resources, we were confident that these are resources that we can raise through our friends' network, because these companies are owned by some of our friends. They are owned by some of our colleagues. We have the network, and we can talk with them, and we have the credibility to connect with them. This is an example. It's the same thing with solar. One of the things that we discussed was how right now we have too much sun. It's very hot. Everywhere you are in South Sudan is very hot. In fact, it's very hot even when it is not sunny. When it is raining, it's very hot. So think about the kind of research that you can do in the solar, with the solar. You can do a lot of research. You can attract solar companies that are looking for land, and a land that is diverse, land that is hot like what we have in South Sudan. And this will allow them to really develop the best kind of solars that are going to serve the world. And they can also think about how they can store energy, how you store electricity. This is going to provide a technology market, and is also going to provide an actual product market for us, where we as people of South Sudan have access to electricity. If there is one single variable that is highly associated with development, it is availability of electricity. So if we are going to raise the livelihoods of our people, because after all, that is the ultimate objective for which we created our country. That was the ultimate objective for which we said that the old Sudan as it was no longer serve us. That is why we created our own country, so that we can realize prosperity, so that we can realize justice, so that we live in a society we are treated fairly and equitably. This we can create. These are examples of projects that we have proposed. But for these projects to actually materialize into reality and to have effects in the life of ordinary people, Lado there in the Mundari village, or Deng in Kwajuk, or Chuol in Upper Nile. It has to attract finances from outside, because the way in which our economy has been managed for the last 12 years, in fact, last 18 years, in which President Salva Kiir has been in power, has been absolutely atrocious. All our money has been wasted. All our money has been stolen by very few individuals with very little left in it. In fact, what has been happening is us depleting key asset in the form of oil. And as we deplete that asset, we're not creating anything in return. And that by itself is a failure, because as you deplete an asset, you should be thinking about what other asset are you going to build, because this asset that you are depleting right now may be generating economic growth, but as you deplete it, what other asset is going to generate economic growth in the next period? And since growth is episodic, you grow in this episode, but then what are you going to transition into? This is something that has been missing in our thinking and in the thinking of our leadership. So right now we are broke. We are a country that has sold its resources in advance, a country that has mortgaged oil, which is the key significant contributor to the GDP. A country right now that is venturing into very shoddy deals with the Russian Wagner Group over the gold in Eastern Equatoria and in Pibor. These are very dangerous moves for the people of South Sudan. And clear message has to be sent out to the leadership that these kind of deals are going to trap the future generations in debt and in a situation that will deny them the ideals we promised in our liberation struggle. And this is why I have been saying for all this time, the only way in which we can fix the economy, build a sound government, a government that actually functions, is for the leadership to exit. For you, Mr. President, to exit. That is the only way we can rejuvenate the economy. You have shown time and again that you are not willing to implement the kind of policies that can alleviate poverty. Every time we have made this recommendation, and in the state, you have chosen to reward very corrupt individuals around you and use the public resources to make the very few wealthy, while the very many become poor. Look at what has happened under your leadership. When South Sudan got independence in 2011, poverty rate was only 50% of the population. 12 years after your leadership, where it is 85%, Mr. President. 85% of the population, it is now poor. When the country became independent in 2011, the GDP per capita, that is the amount of income that is available to a single individual in South Sudan, was $1,500 a year. $1,000, $1,500 a year. Guess what it is now, Mr. President? Only 200. Only 200. That is a drop of $1,300. That is how much you have made every single South Sudanese poorer for the time that you have spent in power since independence. Look at what has happened with corruption. For the last 2 years, South Sudan has been rated the most corrupt country in the world. And we people of South Sudan are very proud. We fought a very proud struggle. People sacrificed themselves. They sacrificed their lives because they believe in the ideals that we were telling to our people. We all hook into it. We all believe in it. Look at how the world came to respect our struggle. Look at how the world appreciated our resilience. Look at what is happening with the basketball. The very few years that Luol Deng has led our South Sudan Basketball Federation, the world respects us, Mr. President. Our people are competent. They are organized people. They are people who are result-oriented, Mr. President. Look at how much we have achieved within a very short time. Right now, South Sudan is going to the international into the basketball World Cup. And we have now been rated the best team in Africa. We are organized people, Mr. President, but you have made us the laughing stock of the world. This is why I keep arguing that you do not have the credibility. You have no legitimacy in the eyes of our people. You have no credibility in the eyes of the international community. You cannot walk into a bank and say, give us 5 billion or 10 billion, a bank that can charge you reasonable rate that actually are affordable to the people of South Sudan. You cannot go and get grants from people. You cannot bring the wealthiest people in the world and sell them a vision in which they can invest and build wealth in South Sudan. Because that is what we need, Mr. President. We have one of the youngest countries in the world. The young people of South Sudan, they deserve to be invested in. And we as a generation should be invested in them. How do we make them productive? How do we make sure that they are building an income, that they are leaving assets for their children, that they are building a future that they can call their own? Because, Mr. President, we don't want what happened to us to happen to them. Many of you sometimes wonder, why are people in my generation so bitter? Why are we bitter? We are bitter because of several things. Number one, anyone who is under the age of 50 is bitter because their childhood has been taken away. When the war started, they were 10 years old or younger. Some of them were not even born. And since that day when that bullet was shot, when that liberation struggle was launched, childhood was no longer the same for the children of South Sudan. They had to grow up at a very young age. They have to deal with difficulties and assume responsibilities years and years beyond what they were required and what they were prepared. So you took away their childhood. Look at those of us in the Red Army. We grew up in the Red Army, in the liberation struggle, doing very much the same thing that the rest of you were doing. You took away our childhood. That is number one. Number two, you took away our youth. Because of the liberation struggle, as we grew older, the only thing that was in our mind was the struggle of the people of South Sudan and how to make sure that we play our role in that struggle. Those who remained on the ground, they fought until the ceasefire was signed. Those of us who had the chance to come abroad as lost boys, those who came to America, those who went to Australia, those who went to Canada, those who were in Europe, we knocked on every single door and told the story of South Sudan, told the story of the SPLM, of the liberation struggle, what our people were trying to create. And by doing so, we managed to mobilize the world to come to the rescue of South Sudan. Through all of this struggle, everything that was weighing on us, we persevered. We went to school, we acquired academic credentials, returned to our country, coming with proposals of what can be done to take the country forward. Just as I was narrating how we can build a canal to take water from areas that are affected by abundance of water to areas that are affected by drought. The way I just narrated how we can build mass housing, 50,000 in every single capital of the 10 states of South Sudan. The way I have narrated about solar, and so many other projects that can be implemented tomorrow. We came with those ideas, what can be done, how we can build our economy, how we can build our governance system, how we can build our security sector, to make sure South Sudan become that country that reward the brave people of South Sudan that paid the ultimate sacrifice to realize this state. Guess what happened to us? We were persecuted. Many of us are dead, like Isaiah Abraham, Carbino Wolagog, and many more. What killed them? Because they dreamed of a better future. People like me, myself, who spent years in jail. What was our crime? Simply by calling for a generational exit? Something that was already the plan of the SPLA? What was the purpose of creating the Red Army? Was it not because of the realization that your generation was only prepared to destroy the old Sudan, but had no capacity whatsoever to imagine a new Sudan and to build it? That was the purpose why the Red Army was prepared. You yourself, you know that. You were part of it. So what is it wrong when the time has come to remind you of the very essence of what was agreed? That was it. So not only have you taken away our childhood and our youth, and you are also taking away our adulthood, and you are taking away time from our children. How can we not be bitter? Did we endure all of that struggle for 21 years so that you can be the president? So that you can mortgage the resources of South Sudan, you and your family? You treat the resources of the whole country as your own? And you subject everyone else to abject poverty? That was not the reason why we fought. Anyone that is sitting in the military headquarters, all those generals that you see at the Defense Council, what do you think they eat in the evening? Where do you think their families eat? Obviously, you don't know because you are surrounded by the looted resources. The looted resources that are allegedly for the construction of the road, we know the deal. The same thing with the borrowing. The money goes, it comes back to you, and then you decide what to do with it. This is the reality. But the rest of your colleagues that are with you, that are protecting you, what are they getting? How are they surviving? They are not surviving. They are living in abject poverty. You have subjected the people of South Sudan to poverty. So when you come and call for these economic conferences, and we know that resolutions have been made in the past, recommendations have been made to your office, yet you never responded. And beyond that, because we realized that you could not govern. You could not govern the country based on the interests of everybody. So when you ask the people of South Sudan to have a national dialogue and come up with the conclusion of what can be done, they responded and they talked for years. Elders, women, children, chiefs. What did they come out in the end? They said that you, Mr. President, you and your best friend, Riek Machar, you must exit. You must leave the politics of South Sudan. That was the only thing they asked of you. How did you respond? Did you implement the resolutions? And here you are now saying you need a conference to be called to come up with resolutions on how to fix the economy, when you have shown time and again that you have no commitment whatsoever to your very word. In fact, this is the story of you. You have no commitment to what you say. These resolutions will never be implemented the same way previous resolutions have not been implemented. So let me save everyone else a headache. There are two choices, Mr. President. Stop corruption and govern like a leader that cares about the country, or exit. Just leave. People may thank you for your contribution in the struggle, despite all the mess that have happened. But to continue to govern the country in a false way, that is doing disservice to the honor of the struggle itself. So in my conclusion, stop corruption and govern like a leader, or exit and allow the people of South Sudan to determine their own leaders.